Hi, thanks very much for listening to and watching The Spirit's Voice. I'm super grateful that you do. This is my little channel to share, well, honestly, just to share the stuff that's going on in my life and in my Christian walk with you. I find that one of the biggest lies that Satan tells is, you're the only one. You're the only one that has these issues. You're the only one that has this problem. You're the only one that's working through this. Yeah, that's a lie. We all sin is common to man. That's what the Bible says. And we're all going through the same stuff. Rich, poor, it doesn't matter. We've all got stuff going on. And I think we all suffer from the same three tyrannies. And I'm going to say that they're part of the devil's work because I think they honestly are. You know, it's funny, you say something about the devil, a lot of people go, oh, come on now, you're talking about nonsense. Well, no. Is the devil a real person? Yes. Does he do bad stuff? Yes. Does he have a lot of minions? Yes. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And hopefully it will encourage you at the end. We talk about the three tyrannies. Because what I've discovered over the years is if you can identify what it is, then you can pray about it and you can make it, you actually have something to focus on working against. But you got to understand your enemy in order to do that. All right, so what am I talking about here? Lately, because we've been extremely busy, as I'm sure everybody has, because of the holidays and other things, I've been listening to audiobooks a lot because a lot of times I don't have the time to read as much as I'd like to. So since I'm in the truck and I'm driving out to El Centro, I'm driving out to Yuma, I'm driving up to North County, whatever, that gives me time to listen to books. And I've been listening to a lot of spiritual books as a result. Now, lately, I've been listening to a lot of books by C.S. Lewis. But I have listened to books by A.W. Pink, his book, The Attributes of God, by J.I. Packer, his book, Knowing God, and others. And yesterday I was thinking about this, particularly last night when my wife and I were sitting here having dinner, how prolific some of these people were, particularly C.S. Lewis, because that guy died when he was much younger than me. I'm a senior citizen. He didn't really kind of never got to be one. He died young. And yet he wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He collaborated with Tolkien. He wrote Mere Christianity. The number of books that guy wrote. Right now I'm listening to an audio series of 3 books that he did, which is a sci-fi trilogy. I think the first one is called Out of the Silent Planet. And it's been fascinating because it's a story that really leads you to Christ in much the same way that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe series does. It's a very interesting man who was extremely intelligent and very prolific writer. And so you ask yourself, how did that guy have the time to do that stuff and I don't? Well, I think it's because they didn't succumb to 3 tyrannies. And I'm going to tell you what those 3 tyrannies are. One is something Sam Paredes said yesterday, which really struck me. We were doing the podcast for GunGuyTV, which is going to get published, I think, later on today. And he said that people sometimes don't prepare because they suffer from the tyranny of the immediate, I think is what he called it. And I thought, wow, the tyranny of the immediate. I just mentioned how busy we are. And a lot of it is just immediate stuff. Have you ever noticed that you go from one crisis to the next, one emergency to the next, lately, we've talked about this, my wife and I, that it seems like whether it's our family or my wife's car just died, or something going on with a rental property, or something going on with our business, or a health issue, or whatever, we literally go through life waiting for the next shoe to drop, for the next bad thing to happen, for the next emergency to show up that we have to deal with. And sometimes it becomes very stressful and overwhelming because we are tyrannized by the immediate. We can't get this done and this done and this done that we need to do because this next emergency cropped up, and immediately we have to deal with that. And then there's the simpler immediate of, you got to make the rent, or you got to make the house payment, or you got to pay the car payment, or you got to pay whatever the bill is, the light bill, keep the lights on, or the internet service so that you can actually upload a video like I'm doing. The basic things of life and the emergencies of life get in the way of our accomplishing the things we should be accomplishing and would like to accomplish for our families, for ourselves, for the Lord. That's the tyranny of the immediate, and I think it's by design. It's by design. And somehow these folks didn't succumb to that as often as perhaps I do. I think a lot of people are so stuck in the tyranny of the immediate that they never accomplish anything for the Lord, and they go through their whole lives having wasted the time they have walking around on this ball. So let me share with you one of the ways I work on trying to overcome the tyranny of the immediate. Jesus said, and it's written in Matthew chapter 6, if you'd like to go there, starting in verse 25, he says, don't worry. But at some point down here in, I have to find it now, after he talks for a while in this lesson, in verse 31, I'll let you read the rest in a quiet time. In verse 31, he says, so do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But, he says, so you could put instead, there's a but there, but you could put instead, if it helps it make clear, instead, or but, seek first his kingdom, God's kingdom, and his righteousness. Not my righteousness, not your righteousness. Trust me, I ain't got any, and you don't either. As we fondly joke around saying around here, when we've run out of something, somebody says, I want some, hey, we do have any milk? And somebody in the family will say, oh, nope, ain't got none of that. Well, when it comes to righteousness, none of us, we ain't got none of that. We got to get that from God. So it says, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things that you're freaking out about, that the pagans chase, will be given to you as well. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough troubles of its own. What Jesus was trying to address there, I think, at least in part, and there's probably 50 million things he was addressing there, but one of which is the subject of this video, is the tyranny of the immediate. I get so freaked out about the fact that we got to pay this bill, or we got to do that, or this breaks, or we got to cover that, or I got to take care of this part of the rental, or I got to do this for work, and right now we're trying to get ready for SHOT Show. I got new classes we're starting at work for the company we own. I posted a video on yesterday in the Practical Defense Systems channel. I'm going to post one on GunGuyTV today. I got all this stuff going on. Well, I'm not unique in that. You got a bunch of stuff going on. Everybody's got a bunch of stuff going on, unless you're dead or you're so retired you're retired. I mean, everybody has got a lot of stuff going on. And that is the tyranny of the immediate. And if you really are honest with yourself, you realize it distracts you from a lot of things that you would much rather be doing. But here's another tyranny. The tyranny of the distraction. I don't think that C.S. Lewis or any of those folks, or even in today's world, a lot of folks get a lot done because they are not tyrannized by distractions. Some of those are very godly people. Some of them are not. Some of them are just people who understand they have a limited amount of time and they're working like crazy to use it effectively. I think Elon Musk falls into that category. I think Donald Trump falls into that category. And I'll tell you what, I've met an awful lot of very wealthy people. When you meet uber wealthy people, you find that they don't waste a lot of their time, and they don't allow other people to do it either, because they're very protective of their time. They understand they have a limited amount of it. And then here we are, we're Christians. And what we would be doing for the Lord is so much more valuable than what Donald Trump does for his hotel chain, or what Elon Musk is doing for Twitter, SpaceX, or whatever. And yet we get tyrannized by distractions. What am I talking about? And when I say we, I'm telling you what, this lesson is just as much, if not more so, for me than it is for you. So trust me, I'm not like super bueno at this. I suck at this. This is why I'm sharing it with you. Because I think it's the devil's really good at this stuff. Look, when C.S. Lewis was around, there was no television, as far as I know, or maybe just the beginnings of it. And people would sit around and listen to the radio at night, perhaps. But there was no internet, there was no TikTok or Instagram or Facebook or any kind of social media. None of that stuff existed. Social media, if you want to call it that, was going down to the local pub and having a pint, or going to church and spending time with your church friends. That was the way people socialized. They didn't do it on social media. And so we didn't have this desire to get sucked in by technology as much as we do today. That doesn't mean that people didn't have things they could get sucked in by. But I think we get sucked in by the tyranny of the distraction a lot. In fact, I'll use this as an example, and I know I'm getting long-winded here, and I apologize, but I think this is important. Many, many times as a minister, or an associate pastor, I guess you might call me, in a couple places, or a deacon or whatever. I've had a few titles, none of which meant anything. But I was in a role where people would ask me for advice or come to me for help. And I've done that a few times. And many is the time when they want help with their budget. And so people would come to my wife and I because they needed help just figuring out how to accomplish things in their lives because they didn't have a budget or they couldn't pay their bills. Well, I got to tell you, the number of times I've sat down and asked somebody simple questions like, how much do you make your coffee at home and make your breakfast at home, or do you grab it on the way to work? And the number of people who stop at a coffee place, Starbucks, Coffee Bean, pick one, right? Or even at the 7-Eleven or the, whatever convenience store you have where you live, just to get coffee and a donut or coffee and a scone or coffee and a bagel or what have you. They do it every morning. Well, you ask them, okay, how much do you spend on that? They say, oh, I don't know. So you figure out they're blowing $10. By the time they get the coffee and the whatever the snack is, they're blowing $8, $10, sometimes $3 to $5, depends on where they go. You go to Starbucks, you're blowing $8 on the coffee, whatever super nuclear latte you're getting. Well, then you take that figure and you multiply it by 365 days, and they realize how much money they spent on a year on that, and then you divide it by 12, and they realize how much they're blowing on an average month. And they're stunned because they're blowing $300, $400, $500 a month, in some cases $600 a month, on just coffee and nonsense. Do you take your lunch to work or do you buy lunch? How much are you spending on lunch? Oh, I'm spending $35 a day. Okay, multiply, just take it, and let's make it easy. Multiply $30 times 30 days. That's a lot of money you're spending on lunch. Okay? And yet these folks can't pay their bills. And once they are confronted with the reality of it, they're shocked and they start making a budget. I think we should do the same with our time. If we actually sat down, if the average person, that includes me, if the average person sat down and said, how much time do I spend in front of the television? How much time do I spend watching videos on YouTube or some other platform? How much time do I spend fiddling around with TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever, social media? If you actually kept track of that for a week and then took that and extrapolated it out to how much time you spend in a month and a year, you would be stunned. Absolutely stunned by how much of your life you are throwing away. You're just wasting it. This is why I think back in the day, when people grew up, they knew how to play a musical instrument because that was the entertainment at the time. They didn't have the radio, they didn't have the television, they didn't have any of that. That's why whole families could play different. I mean, they could start a musical group, and some of them did. The Partridge Family or whatever, right? I mean, this is why they knew how to do that, because they didn't have all this other stuff. I can't tell you how many people I run into who say, gee, I wish I could do X, whatever that may be. I wish I could play the piano. I wish I could play guitar. Well, you can, but you got to stop being tyrannized by distractions. I've had people say about this little channel and some of the things that I do to reach out to people, gee, I wish I had time to do that. Well, you do. You do. You just got to stop being tyrannized by distractions. And here's the other thing about the tyranny of the distraction. Sometimes we will intentionally be tyrannized by distractions because we don't like the other tyranny. The tyranny of the immediate is causing us so much pressure, so much angst, so much frustration. So what do? We say, oh, I need a distraction. So we run over to the other tyranny because it's, at least momentarily, it distracts us from the tyranny that's really hurting us at the moment. And at the end of the day, what do we got? Zero time to accomplish anything for ourselves, our family, or the Lord. Somebody the other day said to me, wow, you built so many things and you got your garden going and you built these tables and you did that, you're doing this other stuff. How do you have time to do that? I said, I don't know, I just go out and do it. And then I asked them what they've been doing all day. They're playing video games, they're watching television, they went to the movies, they went and did, right? And they're being entertained, they're sucking up stuff, but they're not creating anything, they're not producing anything, they're not doing anything even for the Lord. Why? Because they get aggravated and frustrated by the tyranny of the immediate. And then they immediately, at every opportunity, launch themselves into the tyranny of the distraction so that they don't have to think about the immediate anymore. And what they don't realize is they're being tyrannized either way. They're just jumping from one form of tyranny to the other. All right, here's the other one. That's the tyranny of fear. I mentioned I titled this the Devil's Three Tyrannies. Let me read to you out of Matthew 25. I'm going to read the story of the talents. Forgive me, sometimes my reading out loud is not the best, but I will do my best, okay? And I want to show you what happens here. You know the parable, I'm sure, but sometimes it's good to revisit. So here it is. This is Matthew 25, starting in verse 14. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted his property to them. To one he gave 5 talents of money, to another 2 talents, and to another 1 talent, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey, and the man who had received the 5 talents went at once and put his money to work, and he gained 5 more. Now there's a lot to unpack in this parable, not just this lesson, but let's talk about this. Excuse me. This guy did not get tyrannized by distractions. And he didn't suffer by the tyranny of the immediate, or from the tyranny of the immediate that pulled him away from doing his master's work. Instead, he looked at his master's work as immediate. He saw the immediacy of doing the best thing he could for his Lord. That was more important than whatever other immediate thing, emergency, popped up. Remember, we go back to Jesus saying, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And this man did that. And he wasn't distracted by anything. He went right at it, took the money, did some work with it, put it to work, and he got a return and doubled the money. And then in verse 17, so also the one with the 2 talents gained 2 more. Now, again, same thing. Now, and we could be talking about anything. I mean, right now we're talking about talents of money, whatever that is. But it could be anything. It could be your time. It could be God has blessed you and your family. Shouldn't you share that with someone else? It could be that God has blessed you with callings that give you great faith. And have you shared your faith in the Lord? Well, then you're not putting it to work. Okay, so that's kind of what we're talking about. But in verse 18, but the man who had received the 1 talent went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. Now, we're going to talk about the third tyranny here just right now. This guy, he saw no immediacy in doing what he needed to do for his master. He just saw an immediacy in keeping himself out of trouble. This guy was tyrannized by fear, by doubt. In fact, it goes on to say in verse 19, after a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received the 5 talents brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 talents. See, I have gained 5 more. Can you hear the excitement in this guy's voice? He did something great for the Lord, and he was looking forward to his master coming home so he could tell him about it. And his master said, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. You can just see the master giving him a hug, putting his arm around his shoulder, saying, you did a great job here, boss. Well done, man. Good job. Good job. You were faithful to what I asked you to do. You did a great job with it. Come on, let's go spend some time together. And then in verse 22, the man with the 2 talents also came, Master, because he just saw what happened with the previous guy. And he's like, well, I want some of that. Master, you entrusted me with 2 talents, so see, I've gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. You can see the whole scene, can't you? Then, in verse 24, then the man who had received the 1 talent came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you do not sow or have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid. There it is. That's that third tyranny, the tyranny of fear, the tyranny of doubt. So I was afraid, he said, and went out and hid your talent in the ground. See, here's what belongs to you. Now, there was no excitement in that guy's voice. He was just glad to be rid of that. Here it is. Here it is. Take it back. Don't give it to me anymore. Here, take this. It's like the hot potato, right? I don't want that. You take it. I buried it in the ground for you. Here you go. Whew. Oh, man, I'm done. Yeah, well, he was done, all right. His master replied, "You wicked, lazy servant, so you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well, then you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. At minimum, take it down and put it in the bank. Don't put it in the ground, dummy." "Take the talent from him," was the order he gave, "and give it to the one who has 10 talents. For everyone who has will be given more, and he will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what he has, will be taken from him. And throw that worthless servant outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." Well, that's kind of scary, isn't it? Scares the tar out of me. I don't want to be the guy who says, "Oh, take this blessing you gave me, Lord, and here's, take it back. Take it back, take it back, take it back. I put it in the ground for you. I saved it for you. Here you go." I don't want to be that dude. I want to be one of the other two guys who, when I'm standing before Jesus and he says, "What'd you do with your life? What'd you do with what I gave you?" I can say, "Well, see, Lord, you gave me this, and look what I got. Isn't this cool?" I want to look forward to the day when the master comes home, not dread it. And if we fall into the tyranny, if we're distracted, if we fall into the tyranny of the distraction, or we get so busy with the tyranny of the immediate, or we're so afraid, even though we may not be lacking in time or ability, we're just so afraid to step out and do something, we're going to run out of time. My time on this earth is getting shorter by the day. I'm a senior citizen. Okay, I'm in my mid-60s. I'm getting closer to 70 than I am 60, just as fast as I can get there, apparently. And I'm well aware of the fact that my time is getting shorter. I don't know when it's going to run out. Nobody knows except the Lord. Could run out while I'm in the middle of talking to you. Could run out in 30 years. I don't know. What I do know is I want to use the time that he's given me for him effectively, so that he gets a return on the time he gave me, on the talent he gave me, on the ability he gave me. And I'm going to tell you, it's not easy. I get it. If you think that doing this on YouTube is easy to start doing or easy to continue doing, boy, let me help you out with something. Social media is a terrifying place, because no matter what you do, I don't care how you do it, no matter what you do, particularly if you're sharing your faith about the Lord, if you're doing something about Christianity, and you're trying to share your faith, you just get hammered by evil. People criticize the tar out of you, and they're not kind. I mean, to say they're not kind is kind. Okay, they're anything but kind. And the way we're built as human beings is you can get 5,000 people tell you what a wonderful thing that was and how much it changed their life, and you get one person who slips an F-bomb in there or tells you what a rat fink you are or really criticizes the tar out of you. And for days, the comment that will be in your head is the negative one, because it's like the devil sitting on this shoulder or this one or both, I don't know, whispering in my ear, and that comment goes around in my head. I have to pray that thing away. It's painful. It's painful. And even on a little bitty channel like this, it happens. But think about when I used to do the Bible lessons on GunGuyTV. Now, it's not a huge channel, but it's 200 some odd thousand subscribers. I'd just get beat to a pulp. Now, I'm not afraid to do them over there. I just moved them over here so that people could subscribe to them if they wanted to. But it's a scary proposition to step out on faith and share the faith you have in the Lord. It's not easy to do. And so if you ever think it is easy to do, or you think it's easy for me, it's not. It's just that I'm determined to do it. And you should be too. We should not be tyrannized by the tyranny of the immediate, or the tyranny of the distraction, or the tyranny of fear and doubt. Because the truth is, we only have so many hours, we only have so many days, we only have so many years on this earth, And the Lord expects us to do something with that time and to do something with the ability and the talents, quote unquote, that we've been given. And at the end of the day, we're going to be held to account for that. I'm going to have to stand before the Lord. You're not going to be there to give excuses for me. I'm going to have to stand there by myself, and he's going to ask me, and I better have a good answer, just like this story, right? So I wanted to share it with you because it's something I've been thinking about. So I'm really I'm dedicated to not get pulled away by these tyrannies. Instead, I want to make sure I'm spending time with the Lord every day. I want to make sure I'm posting videos like this for you, that I'm sharing my faith, that I'm putting together good lessons when it's my turn to offer a lesson for our Bible group, that I'm doing whatever I can for the Lord wherever I get an opportunity to do that, and that at the end of the day, when my life ends on this ball, I have a good answer when I'm asked, hey, I gave you this, what'd you do with it? And that includes other things too. I mean, I'm not watching a lot of television. I'm practicing to play my guitar. Well, I always wanted to learn how to play a musical instrument, never did as a kid. So now I've been working on the guitar for a while, and I'm just working on chord changes, trying to make them faster right now, because I want to learn how to play some church songs, Christmas songs, Christian music, and so on, so that when I'm hiking, and I want to take the guitar with me, or when I'm camping, more likely, or when I'm hunting and I can sit at deer camp or something, I can play some music. How cool would that be? And it's possible, but you got to pry yourself away from these tyrannies. It takes effort. It isn't easy. And it's helpful if you have friends who will hold you accountable, or you can tell about it and they can ask you, how you doing with that? And so that's one way to get that done. In any case, I know I've rambled on for quite a while. I apologize for taking so long and for the long-winded video. Have a wonderful week. I hope you escape the 3 tyrannies this week. Try to do it next week too. And make sure you're in your Bible. Make sure you're doing the things you need to do. Thank you very much for listening.